So when the UK version was produced and came out here, we were chatting just before we started filming. You said you were, you know, a little disappointed because of the way the film performed. Suddenly, you know, flash forward a couple of years, you're now in the Hollywood version, in that whole world. How did that version of the film come about? What was your involvement in the script, and how do you feel about it now you're in the whirlwind of it?
Right. Well, just to firstly go back a little, I mean, I did say I was unhappy with how it performed in England. That's partly because it was performing so well in other places. I mean, America was, you know, it did okay. It was like moderately successful, but we'd had these huge results in like Australia, where it was #1 for 5 weeks, and New Zealand it was #1. We had #1 sort of scattered all over the world, and you know, it was really going down well and really successful. So I was sort of, you know, in my home country thinking, yeah, okay, this could do really well. And you know, it's such a weird thing when you have a film coming out and it's like your moment. Do you know what I mean? It's your moment where you're like, you know that all your friends know about it, all your school friends know about it. And, you know, there's a lot of, like, emotional elements riding on it. So when it didn't perform as well as we'd hoped, it was disappointing, you know, and it's the way it goes. What was the second half of your question?
How did you feel with, you know, translating that into the American version? You know, you get the whole big Hollywood experience.
Yeah.
Writing it for a Hollywood cast and all of that kind of stuff, and then, you know, actually turning up to your own premiere. I'm assuming there was a big, you know, glitzy red carpet thing, and how surreal that must have felt.
It was. The whole thing was really weird from the moment that Bill Horberg who was the producer of the first one and the second one. I was in the office of SKE, which is Sidney Kimmel, which is the company that made the first Death at a Funeral, and he told me that he'd had a call from Chris Rock, who said, you know, I've seen Death at a Funeral, and I've been the only black man in America to have seen the film, he believed, and he wanted a remake. And it was one of those things you hear about those calls, it's like, oh, that's hilarious, you know, but it's never going to happen, obviously. And then it was literally a year later, or maybe even less, I don't know, but they were in production, and there were a lot of surreal experiences. I think the really surreal moment for me was actually being in the read-through, because that was like where I met everyone for the first time, apart from Chris actually, but pretty much everyone for the first time. And there was, you know, sitting in a room with Neil LaBute and Chris Rock and Danny Glover and Tracy Morgan and, you know, Luke Wilson and all these amazing people just sort of sitting in that one little conference room, and they went through the script, and that was really bizarre. And then, yeah, and then they did a really big marketing campaign in America, and yeah, the red carpet thing was very weird. Although when you're the writer and you're on the red carpet with those actors, it's amazing how little attention you can receive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite funny actually, because everyone was saying to me, "Oh, you've got to, you know, walk the red carpet," and like I can't remember who was on in front of me, like maybe Martin Lawrence or something, and
yeah,
you know, the camera, you literally are blinded by these cameras, and you know, and like Martin's standing there, you know, everyone's seeing photos, and then I sort of walk on and it's like goes silent, and there's nothing, it's like darkness. It's like they're not even going to waste their film. It's a funny thing.
So if you're a filmmaker who has a kind of American sensibility in so much as you like Hollywood movies, I mean certainly that's me. I grew up with Hollywood movies, never was even aware of British films until I went to film school, and I was suddenly delivered this long list of films I ought to watch, and often I felt like these films were being inflicted on me. Do you think it's a good move for a new or an emerging filmmaker to just say, I'm getting on a plane and going to LA and forge a career out there instead of forging a career over here or in Australia or wherever they are in the world? What's your take on that?
You know, there's no obvious answer to it. I think with me, it's actually, ironically, I am my sensibilities are much more English. I grew up loving, you know, English film, you know, sort of the Ken Loach, Mike Leigh thing is totally up my street, and you know, my favourite film is probably With Nell and I, which is obviously a very small, obviously, you know, hugely appreciated, but it's still a very small kind of English film. You know, it's got all that sort of grimness, and you know, that I love. And similarly, the American films that I love tend to be you know, that bit edgier and more indie. So it was not an obvious thing for me to end up in doing Hollywoodish films, but it's just the way it goes. You kind of, you know, your career, you have your plan, but your plan doesn't necessarily follow as you would expect. You know, and for me, I guess I'd happened to have been writing stuff that was appealing to Americans. That seemed to be the way it would go. Like, you know, English people would read my stuff. And I think with a mixture of maybe partly sensibility and also a lack of funds here, there wasn't the same kind of enthusiasm to just make the stuff as there was in America. It's been like a completely different story. So, you know, yeah, I don't know. It's just sort of happened by accident for me.
Hollywood isn't a place to be afraid of, though, is it? I mean, it feels like a big step, doesn't it, to get on that plane and go to Los Angeles. But again, I didn't find it terrifying. It was a bit scary on the first day, but quickly found my groove.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, like, you know, the first time I was going out to America, I had a film that was going into production, and I felt like that is the way to go to America because, you know, I sit and write in cafes there, and, you know, unlike here where I go to a Starbucks and I've got my laptop or whatever, and I feel like I'm the only writer in there, in America, every single person is a writer, everyone. And the people serving you are actors and possibly also writers. So it's a very different...
This is California, not America.
This is California, sorry. Yeah, it's Hollywood, you know, it's Los Angeles.
LA.
And I think, I don't know, I think it's such a tough place for people that I wouldn't necessarily just say drop everything and go out there if you've got nothing... if you don't already have some kind of connection, some kind of link, strong link, because it's not easy. It's not easy to get an agent there. Yeah. It's not easy to, you know, find the right people, or to, you know, to get anyone to take you seriously. I think it's, and at least if you've done something in the UK, if you've done something of some note, that's going to help you a lot.
Right.